In this video, we're going to talk through some of the most common string manipulation methods we can use in Visual Basic. And like we did with the math functions, I've compiled a list here of the most common manipulators we use when working with strings of text. Using combinations of these methods, you can basically accomplish anything you want to regarding strings. So talking through this, we first have string combination, which uses the and sign to combine two sets of strings. And we've actually used this a couple of times in our videos leading up to this one, so you may have seen this before. In our example over here, we are combining the test string with the ing string, so it should result in one full word, testing. The next function is to enter a new line, just like hitting the enter key on your keyboard when you're typing in a Word document. The shortcut for this code in VBA is VBCRLF, which again we have used in previous videos. So in this example, we combine the test string with enter, and then combine that with the ing string. So we should see test appear on one line and the ing appear on a line underneath that. We can also easily convert strings to be uppercase or entirely lowercase. And this is really important because VBA typically pays attention to the case of a string when we're searching or replacing various strings of text within other strings of text. So these are functions you'll probably want to get good use out of. And they're both super simple, just UCase or LCase with the text that you want to convert. The reverse function is pretty unique, and there are limited scenarios where this would really be applicable, but VBA is capable of reversing a string and displaying those characters in reverse order, simply by using this str for string, reverse, and feed it the text that you're trying to reverse. Next, we can break out bits and pieces of the string using right, left, and mid. Right and left are both pretty simple. You feed VBA the string you want to work with, and then tell it how many characters you want to pull out of that string. So right will pull X number of characters from the right end of the string, and left will pull X number of characters from the left side of the string. Mid is a little bit more complicated. It pulls straight out of the middle of the string, so we have to specify which character we want to start pulling from and then how many characters we want to end up pulling. So in this example, we're starting from the second character, the E, and then pulling 4 characters total, so ESTI. A little bit simpler, we can also use the len function for length to find the total number of characters in a string. So when you're doing some data manipulation and you're trying to pull out a particular code or something from the middle of a long string, these 4 functions are going to be super helpful. If you have data that has a lot of spaces in it, a bunch of leading or trailing spaces, we can use trim functions to eliminate those. LTrim will eliminate the spaces on the left, the leading spaces, and RTrim will eliminate the spaces on the right, the trailing spaces. Plain trim will do both. Last but not least, we can search for strings within strings, and we can replace strings within strings. And this is where the case of the string comes into play, like I mentioned earlier. It's best to make sure your strings match case, being upper or lowercase, because in the inString function here, for example, we wouldn't find the lowercase letter t in the uppercase string testing. So inString, which is denoted by INSTR for inString, starts with an input of a start number, which tells the VBA code where to start searching the string. In this case, we told it 1, which means start looking at the beginning of our string with that very first capital T right there. The next input is the search string. It's what you're searching within. So in our case, we're searching within the testing string. And the last input is what you're searching for. What is the substring that you want to find? And in this case, it is capital T. So inString will return the location of the first instance it finds of that substring. So it will count in the number of characters until it hits this particular substring that you're looking for and return that number. If it returns 0, it means that substring wasn't found. InString reverse, which is INSTRREV for InString reverse, is really similar, but it operates in the reverse direction, so it doesn't require a starting place. It will search from the end of the string towards the beginning. So in this example, it will start with the G in testing and search backwards for the first T it encounters. So even though these inString and inString rev examples are both using the same string and substring, they will return different results, and we'll see that in a second here. You can also just straight replace strings within strings, as shown with the replace function we have here. For replace, we identify the search string. In this case, we're looking within test XYZ, and then we tell VBA the string that we want to replace. So we want to get rid of the XYZ, and what we want to replace it with, the ing. So I've gone ahead and I've typed all of this into VBA as an example, so we'll go ahead and go to the Developer tab, open up Visual Basic, and we can see the example here. I'll turn this into a half window and zoom out a little bit so that we can see as our results are getting filled out. So I'll give you a second to pause if you want to copy over this code. Otherwise, I'm going to talk through this line by line, so I'll give you a second to pause. And that should have been enough time to pause. So now I'm going to step through this code line by line, which I'm going to do using the debug step into here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. You can also just use F8 on your keyboard, so I'll hit F8. And now if we break down these first couple of cells here, these first couple of lines, this cells function here is referring to row 3 and column 5. So if we come back to our Excel file, row 3, column 5. So this should show up in our results column. Now in this case, we're just combining two strings of text. We're combining the test and the ing. So we'll hit F8. And we can see that those two strings of text were combined. So now we have one full word, testing. The next thing we do is test out this VBCRLF, which should represent a new line, like hitting enter on your keyboard. So we'll hit F8, and we can see that's shown up how we expect. We have this test on the first line like we do here, then we combined that with a new line and combined that with this ing text on the tail end. So that's how it shows up here. Next, we're going to take this lowercase testing and we're going to turn it into an uppercase word. So we'll hit F8. And we can see we have an uppercase result here. We'll reverse that logic. We'll start with uppercase and move to lowercase. Hit F8. And we can see now we've got all lowercase. So again, these are going to become very important when we're dealing with in-string and replace down here. You can go ahead and change them to be all uppercase or all lowercase to match whatever you're searching for. Now in this case, we should see the word testing get reversed. So we'll hit F8. And we can see it just straight reversed all the characters in that string. So again, limited application, but it is there if you ever do encounter a need for it. So on this particular line of code, we're trying to pull the left 4 characters from this testing string, denoted by the left, and we selected 4 characters over here. So we would expect that this would show TEST, so just the word test. We'll hit F8 to test that out, and it looks like that's what we got. We're reversing that logic a little bit on this line, and we're pulling 4 characters again from the string testing, but this time we're pulling from the right of the string. So we'll hit F8, and we can see we ended up with the further right characters, the 4 rightmost characters. Now this one gets a little more complicated. We're looking in the middle of the string. We're starting with the second character in the string, which is the E, and we're pulling 4 characters after that. So we'll hit F8. And we can see we started with EE and we pulled a total of 4 characters, so that checks out. Now this line, we're just going to pull the length of this string of testing, so it's just going to count the number of characters that appear in this string, which is 7. Now with left trim, we would expect all of the spaces on the left side of the string to disappear, so we'll test that out. And if I click into this cell, we can see I don't have any spaces on the left side, but I do still have those spaces on the right side of my string. Now, one thing to note is that if you ever are in the middle of running your code and you come back into your worksheet here and you click into the formula bar, your code is not going to continue running if you try to continue running, and that's because you have this formula bar active. So in order to keep our code going, we need to click out of the formula bar anywhere else, and then we'll go ahead and we'll click back into our code here, and we'll hit F8 again. So now if I click on this particular cell, we can see already it's offset from what we have here, and that's because the left spaces are still there. Click out of that cell again and click back into our code here. And this is the regular trim function, so we should see both ends, both the trailing and the leading spaces get trimmed off, so we'll hit F8. And we can see here it is offset from both of these. This has trimmed both the leading and the trailing spaces. Clicking back out of that cell and back into our code. In this particular line, we've told VBA to look within this testing, which is all capitals, for a substring, in this case just the capital letter T, and we've told it to start looking in the very first character, which happens to be a T. So when we hit F8, we can see it returns 1, which means the very first T it found in this string, searching from left to right, starting with the first character, it found the substring that we were looking for. It found this T, so it returned 1. Now, with in-string reverse, it's going to start searching from the right end of the string and search towards the beginning. And again, we're looking for this capital T, so when we hit F8, we can see this time it gave us return the number 4, and that's because this is the fourth character in the string. And again, we searched from the back to the front, which is why we encountered this T instead of this beginning T that we did with our regular in string. Now the last thing we're going to test out is the replace function. So we've in the replace function have provided the string, our original string that we're working with. This is the string that we're looking for, and this is what we want to replace that with. So in this case, we should see the XYZ replaced with the ING here. So we'll hit F8, and we can see that's what happened on our form. So we'll hit F8 one more time to end the sub. So in this video, we covered the most common string manipulators that you're going to use in Visual Basic, and you can pretty much use combinations of these functions to accomplish anything you need to accomplish within VBA. So now we can start to use more complex strings in our code.